Hello, everyone. I'm Priest Willis, and this is the Marketplace Podcast, episode number 76. Today, I am joined with Mike Lindell, who is the inventor of MyPillow. Have you been up late at night or during the day, home from school, playing hooky from work maybe, and you've seen ads and infomercials with a guy holding onto a pillow and saying why you should buy that pillow because you get better sleep? Yeah, this is this guy. Mike Lindell shares his story of ups and downs both in his personal life and in business, and what ultimately drove him to deciding to start sewing and creating his own sleep business, if you will. He has a great story to tell. Regardless what kind of business you're creating, whether online or offline, you can get something from this. Without further ado, here is my man, Mike Lindell. Hey, Mike, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Priest. It's great to be here.
Happy to have you on. I've been really looking forward to talking to you here. You have the consummate business story, the American business story from my perspective in terms of how you started, how you've built up the brand that you have. Your face is just as popular in my mind as Colonel Sanders in some respect.
Yeah, right.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've always, if you got to go back, I was born and raised in Minnesota. I grew up in Chaska, Minnesota, and that's where I have my company and everything now. But I've always, you got to go back. I only had original job I had was working at a drive-in movie theater and a grocery store. And those were the last two jobs I ever had. Otherwise, I've always been an entrepreneur. My sister flooded a building once, an apartment with a waterbed once, and so I became a carpet cleaner. And, you know, a lot of things out of necessity. I had a lunch wagon business. I started a lunch wagon business, and then I was got little hometown bars. I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur.
So lunch wagon business, this may not be interesting to some, but I'm from the Midwest, just like you, not too far from you. That's when you pull up at a manufacturing company and you had sandwiches on the truck and all that kind of good stuff. Is that?
Absolutely. And I was actually in a treatment center for alcohol in the mid-1980s. And it was the middle of the night. I went downstairs. I was talking to this guy, and we both started talking. I said, well, what did you used to do? And he said, I ran a lunch wagon business in California. And he told me what it was. And I called up my friend from treatment. And I said, pick me up here when I'm done. I said, you come up with money to buy a truck, and we're going to set up these lunch wagon routes to these companies, and we're going to be rich. You know.
How did you do with that business, though?
We did really good. We built it up real big. We ended up with 5 trucks. We had routes set up in the western Twin Cities, and we ended up splitting partners. My partner and I split partners, and he got the lunch wagon routes, and I ended up with this restaurant that we had at the time, too. It was very good. And then he ended up getting bought out by the bigger company down the road. So
really good story. And what's interesting is, again, I'm from the Midwest, so I remember piling up with my mom, dad, my brother in the station wagon going to the drive-in. What were you, a guy behind the concession stand?
Yeah, I did that, and then I did the ticket taker too. And no, I always had a good working drive. And before that, I worked on, when I was a kid, we'd go down there and work on the farm, my uncle's farm, my grandpa's farms, and. I wanted to point out, I just thought with those lunch wagons, when we had to build those routes, that was something new to the Twin Cities. And I kept getting turned down, and I would go in and they go, I want to talk to the top guy in the company. And they're going, you can't see him, And I just kept coming back in. And finally, I was so persistent. And he said, what? You mean you're going to pull up and people are going to come out of my company, out to your truck, buy stuff on their break? And he says, we already have vending machines. And it was just like a foreign thing then. And I said, well, can I just give everybody food for a week free, one sandwich, and then you see how it works? And in my head, they would buy other stuff, so it wouldn't cost me anything. And he agreed to do that. It worked out perfect. And by getting him, that was the biggest company. So I just built my route around that. And so persistence was a big key back then.
That's right. Were you always an entrepreneur, Mike? I mean, it sounds like you were somebody that when you seen an opportunity, and you mentioned you had alcohol struggles, but even within that, you came down, you talked to a friend, mentioned the lunch wagon thing, but it just sounds like you're the type of person that when you seen an opportunity, you kind of seize the moment. Is that fair?
I wasn't afraid to jump in with both feet. And yeah, I had all kinds of different stuff, that I had tried back in the day. I was also a professional card counter. If you ever seen the movie 21, I did a lot of different things, and I would jump into it. And for one reason or another, end up getting out of it or going on to the next thing. And
I didn't know you could be a professional card counter. I always thought that was illegal. So you could have been good.
There's nothing illegal about card counting. That's an old fallacy. That's they put it all in with the casinos don't like it because you have an advantage over the house. So,
right.
They can bar you from playing. But back in the day, it was more than barring you from playing. So.
Yeah. Back in the day, you'd end up in a warehouse room with
some
guy crunching your knuckles. So listen,
right.
You talked about finding opportunities and being creative and wanting to get into things. I mentioned or alluded to at the beginning of the interview here, your face being as recognizable in my mind and kind of jokingly, but somewhat serious, as Colonel Sanders. So you invented the MyPillow, which is why I have you on, but I wanted to talk about the MyPillow as a product, but I also want to talk about the brand and you within that business itself. So share with me what you've seen in the pillow industry or just your own personal experience that I would have thought that the pillow industry would have been somewhat saturated, but you must have seen some opportunity there. What was that?
I had always had problems sleeping, and it wasn't just because I was a drug addict, but I had problems sleeping, and my pillows would go flat. I'd use my arm, I'd fold, I'd wake up with a headache or neck ache, or I couldn't get to sleep when I needed to, and I just struggled with pillows. And I tried every different pillow out there. Nothing ever worked. In the early 2000s, I was actually seeing a chiropractor by then. I had some other problems from accidents I'd had earlier in my life and stuff. And I said, why don't they make a pillow you could move it? It would hold where you put it. It wouldn't go flat, but yet it'd be soft. And I had all these ideas, and there was nothing out there. So I had sold my last business, and I had a little bit of money. And I had 4 little kids at the time, married, and I decided, I'm going to go out and I'm going to invent this pillow. And I actually had a dream about the name first, the name MyPillow, and I wrote it all over the house, MyPillow everywhere. And my daughter came upstairs. She goes, one of my daughters, she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to invent this pillow. It's going to be called MyPillow. Back then, there weren't My. I believe I was one of the first My's.
You were before MySpace is what you were saying.
I think MySpace and MyPillow were about the same time. She sees these written all over the house. She says, that's really random, Dad. And she went back downstairs. But then I just, I would get these dreams and this idea, I believe I got right from God. And it was amazing. I'm going, wow, this pillow, if I could move it and it would stay there, it would be amazing. So I started experimenting. I got the pillowcases or zippered shells and went to a box store and bought them and started filling them with different things and trying different things. And then it kept going on. And I was getting close. And then this one worked. I knew what I wanted. And then I wanted the pillow to have everything you'd ever want in a pillow. So I'm thinking, well, what are all the problems? And I reverse engineered what you needed to solve them problems. Well, this went on for like a year. I was tearing stuff on the deck, trying different things, going down, doing due diligence. And my friends were laughing at me. They're going, Mike's going to invent a pillow. He thinks he's going to get a patent on a pillow. And on the other half would say, wow, if you come up with something, here's the problems I have with pillows. And they were the same as mine. So when I finally did get it to where I go, wow, this works. Wherever I moved the patent or the fill, it would hold there. But then I wanted it to be able to wash and dry it. I wanted to be able to give it a 10-year warranty. So these ideas I had went back another 2 months to make it so you could wash and dry it. And there was so much due diligence and so much work. But it was exciting because I knew that I was getting close and I knew it was going to solve so many problems. Everybody I talked to had the same problems. And when I finally got to that point and it worked, well, then I had to invent the machine that actually makes the cuts because there was nothing that made those sizes. And during the same time, too, I went online myself and I got the name MyPillow. I wanted to get a trademark on that. I did a lot of this stuff myself. Nowadays, you can go online, you can learn so much, and you can doing your own due diligence. And well, when I finally had the pillow, I had it done, and now I was completely broke. I had no money, but I did have the pillow, and I walked into a box store. I said, how many would you like? I have the best pillow ever made. And you move it, it does this and this. And they literally looked at me and said, sir, you need to leave. And I go, okay. And I was shut out everywhere. And someone said, well, Mike, why don't you try a kiosk? And I said, well, what is it? And how do you spell it? And so I borrowed money actually from an ex-bookie I had quit gambling at the time, sports betting. I had a lot of other addictions, but I borrowed money from him to get through this kiosk and for Christmas presents. I was completely broke and did the kiosk, only sold about 80 pillows during that time because nobody knew, well, what is this? And, we're making our own signs and doing our own stuff. And my wife and I at the time, we worked these long hours. But I'll tell you, at the time, people would come up and that had bought the pillow and go, wow, this thing seems, it's amazing. Yeah, I have those problems too. Well, anyway, that ended.
What problems were they actually addressing? Just to name a couple.
It was all the problems that I had. I said, do you ever have sleep interruptions where you flip-flop all night and, you use your arm's asleep or your neck's sore in the morning? But there was still a lot of stuff I didn't know. But I did know that there was interest there because of similar problems. Anyway, that ended. And that's the only time where I'm going, okay, now we have no money. I had only given away my card. I didn't have any cards. I gave away a phone number to this one guy. He said, do you have a card? I go, yeah, I'm out. I said, here's my phone number. And I'd given him that number. Well, that guy happened to call in January and said he was one of the ones that had bought a pillow. And he said, are you the guy that invented this pillow in Minnesota? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I bought one of those pillows from you at the mall, at the kiosk. And he goes, it changed my life. This is a miracle. And he goes, I run the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show. Would you like a spot in the show? And I didn't really know what home shows and I knew about fairs, but I knew home shows. And in that kind of world, they call it the trenches. You do these shows and you're selling directly to the customer. But anyway, I said, yeah. I said, I'd love to get in the show. And I borrowed money to get in the show. I changed my signage. From what I learned from that kiosk of talking to people, I presented the problem solution in my spiel rather than just say, hey, this is a pillow. I presented the problem and showed them how the pillow would be the solution for that problem. Anyway, we sold out. I got noticed by the Minnesota State Fair. I applied there, got in the first year. But anyway, I was able to then support my family by working show to show every week. And there's nothing better than, getting feedback from people on your product in those shows. In the next 7 years, that's what I did. Work show to show, made them at night, sold them on weekends during the day, and didn't give up.
Those shows aren't easy at all, especially on your feet all day. And, I've been long hours. I've been in business development where I've worked some of those shows too. They're rough by themselves, nonetheless, trying to invent a product and meet customer needs and being every piece. How many iterations of this pillow, Mike, did you have to go through before you thought you found the right one?
I tried over 94 different kinds of foams and different kinds of stuff to go inside my pillow. Then when I finally did get the right one, I got a patented fill. This is a special fill that's made in Wisconsin, my neighboring state, and I still have them to this day. Nothing's changed. From that one that I got done there, nothing has changed from that day to where we're at right now.
Wow. So you are like Colonel Sanders. You have 11 secret spices that I'm sure you're not going to let out to the public in terms of
right.
So how many pillows have you sold to date?
32 million.
32 million pillows.
Yeah, it was. It's pretty amazing. To finish that one story there, I had so much adversity I faced too along the way. I had people try to take the company, try to take the manufacturing. I ended up getting divorced of 20 years with the things that were going on. And plus, I was an addict. I was a drug addict, crack cocaine addict.
So you were a crack addict during this period too, right? As you were developing the pillow and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I was a very functioning cocaine addict for 20 years, and then I had switched to crack cocaine. So I had to fight that too. But when I invented the pillow, that took up my time. So I wasn't so... addictions are just a mask, and most of the stuff from childhood. And so, I had my own adversity I was facing and then all these things that were going on. And on January 16, 2009, I had one prayer and I said, God, I want to wake up in the morning and never have these desires again. And I'm all yours. And I did that and woke up on January 16, 2009. I've never looked back, never had the desire. But the whole company was gone then. There wasn't anything left. These guys had taken all my shows. I had no money left. I had nothing left.
How do they take your shows, Mike?
They went and applied at the shows and they copied my pillow. These guys actually had worked for me. They went and, copied the pillow to the T, and then they went and applied at the shows. under a different name, the perfect
But that's
copy.
where your patent and trademarks come in to protect you, right?
Yeah, right. But see, it gets kind of muddy. I mean, it's sometimes they're hard to fight. If you don't have the money to fight them, well, what good is it right there at that point, Yeah, they were using the exact copy, in fact. And it was funny, about a week later, you talk about passion. I had all this passion. The guy that had taken my fabric, I had to get that back, and I needed cash. And I needed $30,000 cash a week after I quit crack. And I went to borrow money from these guys. Didn't even know them. There were all these CIOs and CEOs, all these guys in suits. And I had walked in, and a friend of mine had told me about them, that they might, they're kind of like mavericks, and maybe they'll borrow money. And anyway, I went in there and I start talking to them all, and I'm telling them, yeah, I used to be a crack addict, and I said I have I invented this pillow, and I'm going to do these shows. And someday I'm going to have the biggest infomercial ever. And if you borrow me $30,000, I'll pay you back $40,000 in 3 months. And all of a sudden, the one guy goes there. It turns out it was their CFO. He goes, well, when did you quit crack? And I said, last Thursday. and the guy goes, 4 of them got up and left the room like Shark Tank. And now there was 4 of them. I said, well, now there's 4 of you. And I ended up getting the money. I believed in it. I had such passion for the pillow. People even say now to this day, 13 years ago, they said, how can you still have that much passion for for a pillow? I said, well, because it helps people, and it's such a blessing to be able to help so many people, and because it works. Well, anyway, I decided to do an infomercial on October 7th of 2011. Friends and family, I said, you guys, let's do this infomercial, because I'd been doing all these shows, and people would come up and they tell me how awesome the pillow was and that it worked so great. And I said, you know what? If nobody will take me, I'm going to bring the pillow to the people, my pillow to the people. And I didn't know that infomercials and stuff, that it's all about branding to go into the box stores. I just thought it's going to be huge. And I said, the one way it is, it's going to be a real infomercial. And I had a real audience. It was a half-hour infomercial. And it was just a friend of mine. And we did this with a real audience, no teleprompter, no nothing. And I hadn't been on TV like that before, and neither had she. Well, I launched October 7th, 2011. And within 40 days, we went from 5 employees to 500.
Wow.
It just exploded.
Wow. Now, you said you just decided to do an infomercial, and I'm sure there's entrepreneurs and inventors listening to this podcast now. Like, how do you just decide to do an infomercial? Today, if I had a product that I thought would really move the people, how do you just get into something like an infomercial?
Well, there was a lot more to it. I actually had a person I had hired. They said he had done infomercials, and he hadn't. And there was a lot of due diligence there too. But I had, you have to do the production. You have the actual production cost to make the infomercial. Then you have to buy the media. And also, I had no money. I had absolutely no money. So I had to also make deals with my fabric that's made here, the patented, and the patented fill, the inside of the pill, all the parts that are here in the U.S. But I had to go to these places where the raw materials come from, and say, hey, I'm going to be the biggest. This is going to get so big. So I had to do like projections of what I was going to do. And these guys are going, what do you mean you're going to go from, this much to this much in 1 month? I told them this is what was going to happen. And to get them to believe it, that was pretty incredible too. So you have to know, there's a lot goes into it, of knowing if you do your advertising. But see, that's why a lot of people that do infomercials, or they do print ads, or they do radio, they test it. Yeah. They test it to see if it's going to work, and then you can just do the multiplication. But there's no better way to test something is in those shows, which I had been doing for 7 years,
That's
7 years.
That's what's kind of good, is that you've been at the markets, you've kind of heard back from the people, which I think for those that are creating a product, you bring up one really good point here, is that, hey, why don't you start getting your stuff out there early to start getting some feedback? And I'm sure you made, as a business person, even though you didn't have tons of money, one thing you did have was a little bit of time and a little bit of desire and passion, as you brought up, to kind of make the necessary adjustments. So by the time you went to the infomercial, you already kind of had the mindset of what the consumer wanted in a pillow, which was really, really good. But as I'm
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you do those shows, you not only, if you need to tweak anything or to adjust, you see the demand of your product, and then you find out, is this just going to get sold once, or are they going to bring back two friends the next time? And, so I knew I wasn't afraid at all to go into the infomercial or the other advertising because it worked and I knew the response. There's no better testing grounds. And it's, you're making a living at that time. At least, it's a lot of long hours and hard work, but you're not only getting the feedback and the due diligence, you're learning that, but you're making money if it's right. If you're getting the shows right. A lot of these shows, let's say they cost $300 to get in the show. It's a 3 or 4 day show. You're putting in your time. But if you're selling 3 or 4 times the product or 5 times the product, at least you're bringing home a little income and you're learning at the same time.
Yeah. So, Mike, in terms of start of the business, you brought up how you got money from a gambler or, a bookie.
No. The money I had when I started working on this, because I didn't work for a year, I just did my due diligence. I had sold my other business. I had no credit at a bank. I had sold that. What I borrowed money from that guy was to that ex-bookie was just it was like $12,000 just to do that kiosk. I mean, that was just one little small piece. But the money I had, all the money I had all my whole life that I put into the pillow when I was inventing it, it wasn't just the time. I wasn't working during that time, so I was also not. I had 4 little kids and married at the time, so we had no income coming in. So I'm burning it, not working too, burning up money, and I ran out of money very quickly. If you're an entrepreneur out there and you're looking for raising capital, you've got to be very careful with that. And I will say that, that's why they have provisional patents. They're not that expensive to get a provisional patent or to get a poor man's patent. You write everything down and mail it to yourself, so at least you have something that it was your idea or whatever. But I can't say enough about getting someone you trust that's been in either, if it's service business or if it's been or if it's an invention, somebody that's been in something like that you can trust and learn from them and just ask them, so you don't have to waste time doing stuff that are either mistakes that they made back then, where you can save time and not go down roads that you don't need to.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, what makes you most happy today? I know it's not money. I mean, you don't strike me as somebody that's moved by money. And I know there's been a sense of real giving because you've taken the jobs from 5 to 500. But as you look back, you step back as an inventor and as someone that has launched out in the business. What makes you happy about being an entrepreneur?
Well, they had 1,600 employees now. That makes me happy watching them every day. All these careers I've created, they're right outside of my office as I speak. It's so rewarding watching my product that came all the way from a little dream to help so many people. I'm very blessed to have a product that actually helps people, but it could be any product. I love helping people, so providing these jobs is amazing. But then to have the money too now, to be able to give back, to be able to give back because I just like helping people and I enjoy that part of it. And it's a challenge that knowing that you did something yourself, there's nothing like it. It's a different feeling than working for somebody. It's so rewarding to be your own boss, but to also to make a difference in the world. That's that I actually have this amazing platform now to do a lot of things with. I'm a Christian, and I also want to give back. God's really blessed me in my life, and that means He's protected me even through all those times with adversity. And the big reward is I don't even know where it ends. I want to give people hope. That's another thing too. Everyone I talk to that they're going, wow, that just gives me so much hope. Where I've come from and to where I'm at is just, it's amazing. And so many people say, wow, you give me and hope, you inspire me. And to be able to do that is also a blessing.
We'd like to thank today's sponsor, TubeBuddy. TubeBuddy is the premier YouTube channel management and video optimization toolkit. YouTube creators will find their new best friend in TubeBuddy. Their browser extension adds a layer of amazing functionality right on the top of YouTube's website. You can perform bulk updates to your videos, such as adding annotations or cards to all your videos with just a few clicks. You can perform find replace on your videos just as you were using a word processor. You can generate professional custom thumbnails using screen prints and branding text layers. You can engage with your audience quicker and more efficiently. You can export your list of subscribers and their social profiles. You can get detailed analysis of competitor channels. You can promote your new upload across other videos. The list just goes on and on. Today's sponsor is TubeBuddy. Go into the podcast notes page and click on TubeBuddy and get it today. You know, that's what I think is beautiful about your story. I really do. And I mean this sincerely, is that here you have someone that's fought with many addictions, crack addictions, which have killed many, right. Not to mention some of the other addictions that you've faced. You've also faced your own personal struggles as an entrepreneur as far as financially and others. And right. Here you come out the other side of this selling 32 million plus pillows. You have 1,600 employees, revenues. I probably could do the math at some point, but
it's a lot.
Yeah, we're talking about millions of dollars in pillows and
so hundreds of millions of dollars in pillows and inventory that you have up on your site. I mean, It is really, really something to be said and hopefully inspirational for others. And as entrepreneurs listen to this, I hope they pull from this that being an entrepreneur just isn't about ultimately getting the dollar. You really should want to strive towards obviously making it comfortable for you and your family, but also being able to help other people. And that's kind of what you're doing here. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, here's about 3 or 4 advice I can give entrepreneurs.
Please.
One is, like I said in the beginning here, really, when you're starting out, get somebody that's kind of like a mentor, that's somebody that has been in something similar where you can learn from them. And the other thing is, I don't care if it's a service or an invention. If you view every customer like it's your only customer, that is so important. And then to have passion, you got to do something you enjoy, or you got to do it, or you have to like the product yourself. If you're making it just for, I'm going to make this much money off it, whatever, but you got to have some passion behind it. I think that's so important. Then when you do get into it, not just your customer viewing as your own, but also your employee. What would you like as, put yourself in the employee's shoes. And that's what I did. When I had that one job way back when, and then driving in the grocery store, there were things I can still think back that I didn't like then. And I make sure that my company, that we don't do that, that we have, you know, we're a help center. We help each other, and we have, if something's wrong, of course, with my adversity, you know, if I see someone with an addiction, we get them help, and they're welcome back, you know, when they get their help, just to create that atmosphere. But to have the passion. And then when you do, then let's say you have your product and you're out there in different venues and you put it in different places, view each one of them like it's your only company. So like with MyPillow, for myself, when you see me on a TV station or you see me in let's say it's a newspaper in some place, you know, wherever, I view that particular paper that's my only company. I have 90 people out on the road still doing those home shows that I used to do. They all have routes. And I view each one of those shows like it's my only show. You know, and when you do that, you can't go wrong. If you know, now it's like having all these amazing pieces put together into one. And then you have that, you've created something that's amazing and helps so many people. There's so many entrepreneurs go, okay, they're worried about this bottom line. Yeah, you need to worry about that. And when you do, you know, your pro forma and your projections and stuff, but there's so many other factors too. Like you've heard the one where, you know, all MyPillow made in the USA here. And I did a thing, actually was at the White House when I did this, where the president brought us in for this Made in America Manufacturing Summit. And I got to go to that, and they talked about making stuff, you know, how good it is to make stuff here. And they talked about overseas. Well, if you make something overseas, and this is real important for an entrepreneur too, you do that, and if you have 120 days overseas, that's minimum before you're going to get it. So, and I'm going to tell you, so many of my friends and people I know of that have done this, and if your market changes, you know, all of a sudden you need less product or more product. Guess what? It's another 120 days. Or let's say you get it and it's not quality that you needed. You know what? You're done. By doing this, all the inventory you have to carry in that, it's not worth it. It really isn't. And then just to save $1, I call it tripping over $1 to pick up a quarter. And
Have you ever considered it, Mike, going overseas with your business?
No, absolutely not. I would never do it in a million years. My company's always going to be made here. We're the ones that are shipping stuff overseas, after we make it, I would never consider it. And there's another thing too, is when you can be right outside here, I can go down to my factories only 4 miles away from my corporate here where my call center is. And I go down there. I was just down there a few days ago, and I can see here's every product that comes off there. If I would not buy that myself or use it myself, I don't want it. There's so much control, to lose that control, that quality control is so important to me. And it's just like my call center. I have my own call center. You get someone right outside of my office or right here in the USA on my call center, to me, customer service to back a product is just as important as the product itself. I go back where you're in time where your handshake is your word. I put myself in that position where that's my only customer, and they got to be treated right. And you start doing that stuff, you're making stuff overseas, and it gets really hard. I never even would consider it.
Let me ask a question, and feel free to tell me you don't want to answer this. You offer multiple SKUs. Now I'm on your website. You probably offer hundreds of SKUs, but I can see at least 6, 7, 8 different categories right now. As a blended margin, what are you typically working with as a margin in this business?
That's ever changing. But if you're going to do a product that's going to end up in the box stores, because everybody gets a piece of the pie,
yep,
you've got to at least have a 4 on your raw material. So if you have a raw material that's cost 10, by the time it would be in retail, it would be at 40 because the retailers take 50%.
Yep.
The guy in the middle takes 50%, and it's so hard. And so you got to work in the numbers. Obviously, when you're at the shows, that's about the same way. I had to learn the hard way when I was a kiosk. When I did that first original kiosk, I was selling the pillows, and I was, it was almost for what I was making them for. And I was actually with my labor, I was losing money on it. So I didn't know my cost. And it's like when I told you when I got real big in 2011, in 2012, I took in tens of millions of dollars, but in 6 months, I was in the hole $4 million. And I had to learn, wow, I bought all this marketing money. I didn't know where my money went. And, I had to learn real fast where I view now each piece that it's my only venue. And I also learned that the more volume you do, you need to really do, for your raw materials, you need to negotiate that. I trusted too much early on, and you got to be careful of that too. Back in the day, my handshake was my word, but I had some things where I didn't go out and get a lawyer, and I ended up paying for it because I didn't have a contract. Yeah. There's different things that you could change, but I learned from it. As long as you learn from it,
that's the key, learning from your mistakes. And if you're an entrepreneur, I would absolutely say to you, you want a lawyer to work with you with your contracts. Don't try to skip that piece of the business, especially if you're in a retail business or offering some kind of consultant service or something along those lines. Get you a good lawyer. Mike, you've been extremely gracious with your time. And as we wrap up here, I just want to ask you one last question. I want to ask you, I did this exercise myself. I looked at a picture of myself when I was much younger, and I look at myself today, and I'm wondering what I would tell myself as a middle-aged person now to a much younger person. And I'll ask you the same thing. If you took a picture of you, Mike Lindell, being much younger, 20, 30 years younger, and look at who you are today, what would you tell your younger self about this journey that you went through addiction, through starting a business, to ending up in the White House, so forth and so on? What would you say to yourself?
Well, that's an interesting question, because people always say to me, if you could go back and change anything, would you? And I said, I wouldn't change a thing if I'm not where I'm at right now. If I was to go back and tell myself, like I say, I don't know if I would, because I'm happy where I'm at now. I feel so blessed. But if I didn't end up here, then I would go back and say, you know what? You should have went and maybe got like I say, lawyers at the time. You should have quit your addictions back then. There's lots of different things I would have told my younger self and said, but for now, where I know where I'm at, I don't know what I would tell myself, because I would be afraid it would change where I'm at.
That's profound. I mean, it says a lot about you. The reason why I ask this is because it's intentional to really see. The question is, how much would you change versus how much you wouldn't? And not necessarily that you would change, but you're really kind of telling your younger self kind of the signposts and the E.W. Kenyon has this book about signposts and so forth and so on. And it's just the wisdom of being older that you would share with someone so much younger.
Right. I would say, getting a mentor for, because I went into completely with MyPillow, it took so much longer because of the mistakes I made. Now, if I had went to someone somewhere and said, to a friend of mine that had invented something or had done, hey, will you tell me the same mistakes? Because I'll tell you, when I had like my other businesses, I did do that then. I asked the owners I was getting them from, and, I asked them all kinds of questions and learned from them. There's nothing wrong with that. But I look back now, and that's why I say it's that when you ask that question, I look back and I say, wow, if this hadn't happened, I can tell you this. I want to say this for any entrepreneurs out there too. When you get something and something happens that's so devastating at the time, you don't see, how am I going to get through this? Or, this is terrible. But 99.9% of what we worry about doesn't come true anyway. And you're going to look back on that. Like I look back with MyPillow and go, wow, if this hadn't happened, it had to happen the way it did, these things. And I think a lot of times you'll look back and you'll say that this adversity, if that wouldn't have happened, as long as you come out of it and you make, you learn from it and make better discernment or you make better choices. For me, because I got a book coming out with mine, What Are the Odds from Crack Addict to CEO? And actually we had it all laid out here in this office I have here on this desk, and I had all these different chapters of my life, and that was actually said to me. They go, Mike, you know what, why didn't you change back here? When you were talking the addiction piece and stuff. Well, at the time, it's hard to see when you're when you're there at the time to look back. And maybe I would have said to my younger self, there's so much more to life than that. And as far as advice on the different business I was in, each one would have been separately, but I would have said, you know what, you're making a big mistake here, but, and a lot of it was, like I say, was that mentor, or if you're getting it from another person, a business, ask them the knowledge is king there, and ask them, especially because things change too. And what was advice 20 years ago might not be the same advice you're getting in real time now.
True. Well, Mike, you've been extremely gracious. Look, how can people, if they want to buy your product, how can they find you out there? How can they follow you? Feel free to share the URL site. Feel free to share anything you want. How can they reach out, test out your product? Feel free to go.
You could use my promo code Mike and on my website, mypillow.com, and that'll save you. That's the biggest savings, up to 50% off on most of the stuff and most of the items. And every one of my products I've been developed myself or invented, and they all have to do one thing, and that's help people. That's the best way to go direct through us. We do, obviously there's pillows in the retail and all the retail stores, but I have so many other products now that help people with their sleep and with their well-being, and just know that all my 1,600 employees, we thank everyone out there for just being able to help you and it helps us to keep stuff made here.
Mike, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Priest. God bless.
God bless you.